You're the biggest disgrace to this family, a complete embarrassment who's done nothing but tarnish our name." My father's voice boomed across his retirement party as 200 colleagues and relatives watched him point at me like I was garbage. But the USB drive in my pocket contained security footage of him embezzling $3.2 million from the pension fund he'd managed for 30 years, and I was about to find out if he valued his reputation more than his hatred of me. The country club's grand ballroom went silent. Crystal champagne flutes stopped mid-toast. My stepmother Victoria smiled that venomous smile she'd perfected over 20 years. My half-siblings, the golden children, watched with barely concealed glee as Dad prepared to deliver what he clearly thought would be his greatest performance. "Stand up, Damien," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Let everyone see the son who chose to be a public defender instead of joining the family firm. The bleeding heart who wastes his Yale law degree defending criminals and welfare queens." I stood slowly, feeling the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on me. But instead of the shame he expected, I felt only calm certainty. 3 months of investigation, dozens of recorded conversations, and one brave whistleblower had led to this moment. "You're absolutely right, Dad," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I am a disgrace to what this family represents." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dad's smirk widened, thinking he'd won. "So you should probably remove me from your will too," I continued. "Wouldn't want the family fortune tainted by association with someone like me." He laughed, that cruel bark I'd heard my whole life. "Already done, boy. Changed it last month. Every penny goes to your brother and sister, the children who actually deserve it." "Perfect," I said, pulling out my phone. "Then I won't feel guilty about this." Dad's laughter faltered. "About what?" "About reporting you to the FBI for stealing $3.2 million from the Arlington County Teachers' Pension Fund." The silence was absolute. Dad's face went from red to white so fast I thought he might faint. His hands gripped the podium as his carefully constructed world began to crack. "You're lying," Victoria hissed, but her voice trembled. "Am I?" I held up my phone, showing the email I'd sent 10 minutes ago. FBI Financial Crimes Division. Copied to the SEC, the Department of Labor, and, just for fun, the Wall Street Journal. They're particularly interested in how you've been living on teachers' stolen retirement money for the past 15 years. Dad ripped off his glasses and threw them across the room, where they shattered against the wall. "You ungrateful little." "Ungrateful?" I pulled out the USB drive. "This contains everything. Every transaction. Every offshore account. Every forged document. Including the recording of you bragging about it to Victoria last Christmas. Remember? You called those teachers stupid sheep who deserved to be fleeced. Recording? You recorded us in our own home." Victoria shrieked. "No, your housekeeper did," I said calmly. "The one you've been paying under the table for 20 years. The one whose mother lost her entire retirement because of Dad's scheme. Turns out she's been recording everything, hoping someone would listen. Lucky for her, disgraceful sons who defend criminals and welfare queens tend to believe whistleblowers." The ballroom erupted. Dad's colleagues from the investment firm backed away like he had something contagious. Relatives whispered frantically. Someone was already on their phone, probably checking the news sites. "This is insane." My brother Christopher stood up, his face flushed. "Dad's been managing that fund for 30 years. He's won awards. Awards for fictional returns," I said. "It's a classic Ponzi scheme. Use new teachers' contributions to pay retiring ones, skim off the top, cook the books. Works great until someone actually looks at the numbers. But the audits," someone called out, "were performed by his golf buddy's firm," I finished. "That's in the evidence packet too, along with the bribes to keep everyone quiet." Dad lunged toward me, but several men held him back. "You've destroyed everything. My reputation, my legacy." "No, Dad. You destroyed it. I just refused to keep it secret anymore." "Why?" Christopher demanded. "Why would you do this to your own family?" I looked at my half-brother, the one who'd gotten the car for his 16th birthday while I'd been told to get a job. The one who'd had his Harvard MBA paid for while I'd worked 3 jobs through law school. "Mrs. Patterson," I said instead of answering him, addressing an elderly woman near the back. "You taught 3rd grade for 40 years. Retired last year. How much of your pension did you lose last month when the fund adjusted for market conditions?" She stood shakily. 30%. I might have to go back to work at 73. "Mr. Jameson," I continued, spotting another familiar face. Taught high school chemistry. How's your wife's cancer treatment going now that your pension barely covers your mortgage? We're managing, he said quietly. Managing. I turned back to Christopher. That's why. Because while you got your MBA, these people who dedicated their lives to educating children are choosing between medicine and food. Because Dad stole from teachers to buy yachts and country club memberships. Because someone had to choose between family loyalty and basic human decency. You sanctimonious little, Victoria started. Save it. I cut her off. The FBI will be here in about 15 minutes. They wanted to wait until after Dad's big retirement speech. Thought it would be poetic. The man who stole teachers' retirements getting arrested at his own retirement party. As if on cue, sirens became audible in the distance. Dad sank into a chair, his face gray. 30 years. I built an empire. You built a house of cards on the backs of public servants, I corrected. And you raised me to believe that was something to be proud of. Thank God I became the disgrace you always said I was. My sister Madison, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Damien, is it all gone? All the money. Most of it, I said. The FBI will freeze all assets. The houses, the cars, the accounts. Everything purchased with stolen funds will be seized. Hope you enjoyed that Lamborghini, Chris. You're enjoying this, Dad accused, his voice broken. You're enjoying destroying your family. No, I said honestly. I'm not enjoying it. But I'm not sorry either. You had 30 years to come clean. 30 years to return the money. Instead, you got greedier. And you raised us to think we were entitled to wealth built on suffering. The sirens were getting closer. People were starting to leave, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. The retirement party was becoming a crime scene. Was it worth it? Victoria asked bitterly. Betraying your family for strangers? They're not strangers, I said. They're clients. The criminals and welfare queens I defend? Half of them are teachers' kids who turned to crime because their parents couldn't afford basics after Dad stole their security. This isn't betrayal, it's justice. FBI agents entered the ballroom, their presence turning whispers into shouts. The lead agent approached Dad. Richard Thornton, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. As they cuffed him, Dad looked at me one last time. I'll never forgive you for this. I know, I said simply. But maybe someday you'll understand that the real disgrace wasn't having a son who became a public defender. It was being a father who needed defending from. They led him away as cameras flashed. Journalists had arrived with the FBI, turning his retirement party into a perp walk. Victoria was also arrested, screaming about lawyers and frame-ups. Christopher and Madison stood frozen, watching their gilded world crumble. What are we supposed to do now? Madison asked, tears streaming down her face. Get jobs, I suggested. Live honestly. Learn what it means to earn something instead of steal it. Radical concepts, I know. You've left us with nothing. Christopher raged. I've left you with the same thing Dad left those teachers, I corrected. The difference is you're young enough to recover. They're not. As the ballroom emptied, I found myself alone with Mrs. Patterson, the retired teacher. Thank you, she said quietly. I knew something was wrong, but nobody would listen to a silly old teacher. You're not silly, I said. And I'm sorry it took so long. Sorry that the family disgrace was the only one who would listen. She patted my hand. Being a disgrace to corruption is the highest honor there is. Your father never understood that real legacy isn't money, it's integrity. I walked out of the country club into the warm evening air. My phone was buzzing with calls from family members, but I ignored them. Tomorrow would bring more arrests, more revelations, more fury from the people who'd benefited from Dad's crimes. But tonight, I had a different appointment. 23 of Dad's victims were meeting at my office to discuss recovering their stolen pensions. Pro bono, of course. The kind of work that had made me a disgrace to the Thornton name. As I drove away, I thought about Dad's words. You're the biggest disgrace to this family. He was right. I was a disgrace to everything the Thornton family had become: greed, corruption, entitlement, cruelty. I'd failed to live down to their standards. Thank God for that. The next morning, the headlines screamed. Respected fund manager arrested at retirement party. Son provides evidence to FBI. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature. The whistleblower's son, when family loyalty meets fiduciary duty. But the message that mattered most came from an unknown number. Mr. Thornton, I'm Janet Rodriguez. Your dad's scheme cost my mother her retirement. She died last year, still working at 78. Thank you for being the disgrace your family needed. Some of us will get justice because of you. I saved that message, printed it out, and hung it on my office wall, right next to my public defender's certificate. Because if being a disgrace meant choosing justice over blood, protecting the vulnerable over the powerful, and telling the truth over keeping secrets, then I'd wear that title with pride. Dad had pointed at me in that ballroom and declared me the biggest disgrace to our family. It was the first honest thing he'd said about me in years, and the greatest compliment I'd ever receive.